We got the Sasquatch knocking at the back door. We got the Greys crash landing on the living room floor. It's four guys talking about the weird and strange, from the Mothman's wing to the Skinwalker Range. Welcome to the Chupacabra. Talking about the monsters that nobody knows. It's the Chupacabras, just four guys and the stories they chose.
Cabros, episode number 2. Who wants to go first?
I thought this was your show with the Arkansas or the Missouri Howler or whatever.
I thought we all brought one thing.
Okay.
Well, you know what? Let me lead with the thing I was talking about pre-show. Somebody posted a link. Somebody posted a link where, according to government studies, and they would know, people from Kansas are have a slightly greater than 1% likelihood of being abducted by aliens.
You know, I saw the same thing for Ohio.
Is this a real government study, or is this some kind of way to induce people to have pride in the state they're in?
They're trying to promote tourism.
It wasn't
the
a study
alien people to
conducted
come
by
out
Somalians.
to the
Yeah,
abduction tourism.
I mean, okay. On one hand, my question is, how would anybody know who is more likely to be abducted by aliens based on what state you're living? But then I thought, well, clearly the government's in bed with the Greys, so they would know. All they got to do is ask, hey guys, when you go, is there a place that you like to go more than others? And apparently the aliens like the Midwest.
More trailer parks.
They like places where there's a higher concentration of trailer parks, I think.
Yeah.
Then why are they that it can't be Kansas? I mean, I live not that far from a lot of trailer parks.
Have you been
And also
to Kansas?
the terrain is hillier, so you could probably hide your craft behind things. What are you going to hide your craft behind in Kansas? A cow? No, you're busy abducting it too.
If you park far enough away, nobody can see it anyway.
Yeah, but then you've got like this.
There's a
All
lot
right,
of
we
empty
abducted
space
him. What
in
do we
Kansas.
do? Well, we got to huck it out to the ship. It's like 3 miles. I parked it in the back lot. So it's the only parking I could get, guys.
But then you're the first one out, afterwards, though, so you're closer to the exit.
Right, but it's an abduction, not like Ren Fair. It's not. I mean,
yourself.
It could be both.
Yeah. Who knows? There might be all kinds of stuff going on during those abductions.
Get them abductions, a giant turkey leg, one of those wooden swords. It's all these little guys with big heads going, huzzah! And you're like, wait a minute.
Dwayne has muted himself.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was trying to switch microphones to this one, but apparently you can't do that in the middle of the podcast. So we'll go with this mic. Hopefully it's good enough. But the Ozark Howler is one that I wanted to talk about because it's here in Missouri and allegedly, and I am in Missouri. So I've never seen the Ozark Howler myself, but the Ozark Howler is apparently like a black, it's got glowing eyes. Let's go through this. The Howler is, according to legend, a chimera. Have you heard that before?
I have not.
I have not heard that about the Howler, but I have heard of chimera before.
Yeah, it's they say it's got a glowing eyes, They mention an internal luminescence to the eyes, which are often described as burning embers or glowing red. In 1990, there was some kind of controversy. A student at the University of Arkansas claimed he'd completely invented the Ozark Howler. I don't think so, because it's been around a lot longer than that. But the idea of the Ozark Howler goes back all the way to Arkansas, and it's basically a big dog type thing in the woods that will eat you. And what's funny is when I first looked up the Ozark Howler, I mean, we talked about this before, and the idea was that this was actually invented by people who wanted to keep others away from like their moonshine stills and things like that. And I don't know if it was set up, but the first video I saw um, on YouTube about the Ozark Howler was this guy who's well known, and I don't want to get into his videos and stuff, but he was actually out looking for the Ozark Howler and stumbles upon a guy making moonshine out in the woods. Was it set up? I don't know. It could have been set up, but I thought that was an interesting thing that here's someone out looking for the howler, and what do they find instead? Somebody making moonshine. So, um, the people say that it's a massive, stocky predator that is about the size of a black bear, but the muscular build of a cougar. It's got shaggy black fur, glowing red eyes, and thick goat-like horns. And it has a blood-curdling cry described as a cross between a wolf's howl, an elk's bugle, and the maniacal laughter of a hyena. And some say that I've met some folks like this at political events before.
And it drives around in an old truck.
Some say that Daniel Boone encountered the beast. Others say, like I said, it's just invented by moonshiners. And what it reminded me of when we started talking about moonshiners, we talked about working at the academy last week. And
What academy are you referring to, by the way?
we had in Tarkio, Missouri, there was Tarkio Academy, and it was a residential treatment facility for adjudicated youth. So we had kids from all over the country. We had kids from Colorado, St. Louis, Kansas City, Omaha, Philadelphia. I mean, were from all over. But we didn't have fences, and we didn't really have guards. And I mean, it wasn't unusual for a kid to just in the middle of the night run off, and we'd have to go chase him down and get the law enforcement involved. And I remember one of the things, I remember one night talking with a kid who was from like Philadelphia. He was from a big city, and we told him not to run because the raccoons would get him. And they're like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, raccoons are as big as a bear. They'll tear you up." And he's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, you got to be careful out there. There's raccoons. They're no joke. You get caught out in the woods and a raccoon finds you, you're done. Well, I ain't gonna run. I'm like, exactly. So how difficult would it be to say, yeah, I was out in this section of the woods where your moonshine still is, and say, I heard this howl and saw this, this howler, the Ozark Howler, and just invent this thing just to keep people from out of your section of the woods.
It reminds me of two things. Number one, a lot of our fairy tales that came over from Europe are of that exact nature. Especially the ones that came out of Germany, because Germany was dominated. I guess still is. I guess when it comes to land, the Black Forest is huge. It's huge. It's thick, and back in the day, really, really dangerous.
Fangorn.
So while there were wolves in there were bears in there. You didn't want kids to go wandering into the woods, so you made stories about things in the woods that would get you.
Like the
It's
necromancer.
why, well, it's like old witches and things like that. It's why also in a lot of those fairy tales, the woodsman was the good guy, because the woodsmen were like the only adults who really knew the woods and were also armed, who would look after you. So like a lot of fairy tales were cautionary tales. Stay out of the woods because the woods will kill you. Stay out of the woods. Except you don't tell kids stay out of the woods will kill you, because kids are nuts and they'll just go wandering into the woods.
Unless
So
there's a raccoon the size of a bear.
unless there's raccoons the size of a bear. Um, the other thing that gets me here is that like where I live, there's a lot of my county that is just swamp. You can't live there. It's a swamp. Um,
You talking about DC?
just south of DC, Charles County, Maryland. If you look at a map of Charles County, actually DC, a weird little lore about DC is up until they came up with a cure for malaria. If you were in the military and assigned to the DC military district, you did get hazard pay because there was a legit chance you could get bitten by a mosquito, get malaria, and die. It's just it was a terrible place. It still is. Like in the summer, it's horrible. But my if you look at my county, you can see places where like nobody is because it's a big swamp. And on the western side of my county, we used to have kids. The church I went to had a bus ministry where we would pick up kids on Sunday morning and bring them to church. And we'd go by all the houses on Saturday and visit them to see if they were coming, see how they were doing, see how their families were doing, all that stuff. But all the kids had legends of the swamp monster. You don't go into the swamp because the swamp monster will get you. Was there a swamp monster? No idea. Wasn't going to try it. Those kids lived there. They would know better. But it occurred to me when I was an adult that if I didn't want my kids going into the swamp, I might make up a story about a swamp monster. I'm not saying the swamp monster isn't real, and I'm not saying the Ozark Howler isn't real, because you know what? There is a whole lot of this planet. We like to think we know everything about this planet and everything that's on it, and we do not. We don't. You can go into the woods and just disappear and no one will find you. We don't. We have
Yeah.
no idea. So
That's the one argument that people use for things like Sasquatch. Say there's no Sasquatch. We've been all these places. We would have seen something. But if you've ever taken a flight over the Pacific Northwest, there is so much empty, just forest, with no roads in it, nothing. I mean, who knows if even the Native Americans ever made it to some of those spots back there. I mean, it's just wide open. There's so much space out there that's totally unexplored.
and how many stories are there of like, somebody who went on the run from the law and just went into the woods and
Mhm.
was there for years? And it is entirely plausible that a creature who is born and raised in the woods and who is just animals are the ones. And
Mhm.
if they don't want to be found, they're just not going to be found. And it's not like we're going to be the brilliant ones to. The way human beings find things that are in the woods is we cut down all the woods
True.
and just kind of sift through whatever we find. That's how people find all these. We found another species of animal in the Amazon. Yeah, because you cut down the tree they were living in. You didn't
Well,
do it because you were out there walking through this wonderful game trail in the Amazon and this animal came out and went, "Hi, I'm an undiscovered species. Glad to meet you."
yeah, there's a guy on YouTube. His channel is the Malibu Artist. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He's a shark guy. He uses drones in Southern California to spot white sharks off the beach and gets footage of them. And he's not. I don't think he's a biologist or anything, but he's just kind of nailed this technique of finding these the sharks. And he's kind of gotten in with a bunch of research people and stuff like that. But it is unbelievable how often people are in the water right next to a shark. The shark doesn't care that you're there. You don't know the shark is there, and everybody just kind of goes along their way. Jaws taught us that, like, if you're in the water, you're immediately going to get devoured, right? But there's like so much interaction there that you don't even, if you're at water level, you can't even see the thing. And I think the same thing happens when you're in the woods, and whether it's a howler or a Bigfoot or whatever, if they're there, they could be right there next to you and you wouldn't even know. I think you're walking past bears and bobcats and deer and everything all the time that you don't even see because they know you're there and they stay hidden. So some of those arguments, I'm still I'm on the fence of whether I would say some of the stories are true or false, but it's like the ones that say like we would have seen something more often or whatever don't really fly, because that's just not how it works in the woods.
Yeah. I know that like we knew chimpanzees existed, but it took us a long time to find them. Like we knew they were out there,
Yeah.
we couldn't
Same with
find them.
gorillas were a myth for a long time. They were considered a myth.
And there was that whole movie, Gorillas in the Mist. So I mean,
I don't believe Sigourney Weaver exists.
Yeah.
So let me
no,
tell
she
you,
does. She was seen by at least one alien.
at least one. So
At
let me
least.
tell you a story. And this one goes back, like, this goes back to the idea that this person in the 90s invented this idea. So this is from Missouri, 1864. During the Civil War, the war had turned neighbor against neighbor. The Ozarks were thick with men who trusted no one, not Union blue, not Confederate gray, not even the farmer down the road who once shared salt and seed. A small band of Confederate irregulars had made camp beneath a limestone bluff. No real fire, just coals buried in ash so the glow would not carry. Horses tied low, blankets damp from the night air. They were not afraid of the dark, they were afraid of being seen in it. Close to midnight, the youngest of them, a boy barely old enough to shave, stiffened. He heard something along the ridge above camp. Not boots, not hooves, something dragging, heavy, uneven, as if it paused between steps. He whispered to the others, and the men listened. The sound came again, slow, deliberate. Then the hills answered with a low howl. It began low, so low it might have been wind slipping through rock. It rose, thin at first, then stronger, stretching higher and higher until it scraped the edge of hearing. It did not break like a wolf's cry. It climbed and held, then bent into something wrong. A cracking note, almost like laughter, twisted into a scream. Every man jumped to his feet. They knew wolves. They'd hunted them. This was not a wolf. One of the older soldiers muttered that it might have been a panther. Another shook his head. Panthers scream, sharp and quick. This was long, intentional, and measured. The horses began to pull against their tethers. A second howl split the ridge. This time, one of the men swore he saw it. A silhouette against the moon. Broad shoulders, too high for a dog, a narrow head, 2 points rising above it, curved and unmistakable. Horns. Then the eyes. Two red embers where no embers should be. The figure did not rush them. It stood there watching them. A musket fired. The flash lit the ridge for a heartbeat. The report cracked through the hollow. When the smoke cleared, the ridge was empty, but the forest was not silent. Branches snapped higher up the slope, moving parallel to the camp, not retreating, circling. Needless to say, the men did not sleep that night. By morning, 2 horses were gone, the tethers torn, no blood, no tracks they could make sense of in the rocky soil. Years later, one of those soldiers told his grandson about that night. He said he'd faced gunfire and ambush. He'd seen men die beside him, but nothing unsettled him like the sound that came off that ridge. He said this about it: in war, you fear men because you know what they are. In those Ozark hills, we feared something we did not know. That's the story of the Ozark Howler.
Nice.
Just a meth head out in the woods.
I don't think they had meth in 1864.
It's a time traveling meth head out in the woods. You take enough meth and you will travel through time.
I just keep thinking like the
No
name
voice.
gets me though. The Ozark Howler sounds like something that you wouldn't want to look up on Urban Dictionary. You know.
It it I'm interested that the Ozark Howler, it, it is a description of several different types of animals.
Yeah.
So it's a bear in size, but a wolf in behavior, but a cat in sound. I mean, and lots of cats scream. Um,
Yeah.
lots of cats scream, and it sounds like I actually heard a lynx once, not far from where I lived, that legitimately I was leaving a band rehearsal one night, and I and one of the other people in the band came out and heard this scream. It sounded like a woman. It sounded like a
Mhm.
woman screaming for help.
Yeah,
And
bobcat, terrible. They sound
yeah,
awful.
bobcat. We called the police, and the police came out, and the police officer heard it, went, "That's a bobcat." We're like,
Mm,
"That's a what? A what?" Because I had just not even really thought that. Of course, bobcats live in the area. Of course they do. But I had not thought about them. Like, yeah, we get a couple calls a month like this, and it's just that's what they sound like. And
yeah,
so, I mean, there are a
foxes
lot of
too.
things. So yeah, so it could be a lot of animals, but it could also be one animal. And I am not gonna be that guy who says no. There is no way I'm gonna be that guy who says there is no such thing. Because
Yeah. Well, logically, you have if there is something there, there's going to be people who have a legitimate sighting. There's going to be people who see something else and say that it was that. There's people who see a fox and think it's a coyote. It's kind of like
yeah,
you never you can't eliminate it by saying like that sighting was false or that you can explain this one away by this. You can't eliminate the idea that the thing exists by doing that. I mean,
and you're also gonna get descriptions. I'll make an assumption, right? That someone has seen an actual Ozark Howler, right? And they're attempting to describe it. But one of the things that we absolutely know is that eyewitness descriptions usually are garbage.
yes,
Especially if you're seeing something that has frightened the snot out of you and you're busy running the other way.
right.
I mean, so it is entirely possible that some of the descriptions. So are these horns? Maybe. Are they long ears? Maybe.
Yes.
Are they
Oh,
ears that are regular size ears, but you're so scared that you just screwed up the description of how long they are? Also, yes. So it's entirely plausible that people are seeing something that is really an immense type of creature that maybe we already have it. It's just big. It's huge. And our eyewitnesses are one of the things is never so when you hear these eyewitness descriptions, and this is not disparaging eyewitnesses, right? At all. None of these witnesses. But what you never hear is I was walking through the woods perfectly calmly one day at night. I heard this horrible scream and I calmly turned to see if I could chronicle what I had heard. No, it's always I heard the sound and then I soiled myself.
and
Um,
it's not like you're walking through the woods and you're gonna get spooked by something. You hear something snap and you turn, and out of the corner of your eye you see something, and it's not like if it's unknown, your mind's gonna go, "Oh, that's much smaller than I expected." Your mind's gonna say, "You need to run from this giant in the woods."
Yes.
correct. Right.
Well, I think
This is
I've
a
mentioned to you
yeah.
guys once before the Forrest Galante. He's a
Yeah,
biologist that does the
that's the one who went
Extinct or
and found
Alive show.
the
He
moonshine still.
what's that?
He's the one who found the moonshine still that I was talking about earlier.
Okay, yeah, and I remember seeing the show where he went out and was interviewing some older guy that his family were moonshiners going way back, and the old guy had he had like a clump of fur or something that supposedly came off of the Ozark Howler that his dad shot at or something, and they ended up testing it, and the DNA came back, and it was from that really critically endangered wolf species that lives in that area, a red wolf or something like that.
Yep, I've heard Ozark howlers. They think they're red wolves. Yes.
Yeah.
Here, let me tell you this story because there's a guy who you wouldn't expect to get spooked in the woods too easy, and this story involves him. So I'm not going to lie to anybody. I didn't write these. I'm asking ChatGPT to tell me stories about the Ozark Howler, and I didn't like the way it wrote the last one, so I had it write this one in the style of Rod Sterling. So I'll try and do do the master proud here. You ready? Here we go. There are places in this country where the land keeps its own council. Long before survey lines and state borders, before roads cut through timber and stone, the Ozark Hills stood quiet and watchful, limestone bluffs, dense hardwood forests, valleys that hold sound long after it's made. Into that wilderness stepped a man who believed he understood it, Daniel Boone. Hunter, scout, explorer, a man whose life was measured in miles walked and dangers survived. He had faced armed men and hungry winters. He knew the language of wolves. He knew the scream of a catamount. He knew the sound of wind traveling through rock. He did not know this. The year was late in the 18th century. Boone and a small party made camp in a narrow Ozark valley. Low fire, rifles close, the kind of night that presses in from every direction. Just after the moon cleared the ridge, the sound began. Not sudden, not sharp. It started low, almost beneath hearing, like something rising from underground. It moved through the valley, as though testing its own echo. Then it climbed, higher, thinner, sharper. The men around the fire fell silent. They had heard wolves. They had heard panthers. This was neither. The cry did not break. It did not fade. It stretched upward until it bent into something almost human. Not a scream of pain, not a call for others. A solitary declaration. The hills answered it. One of the younger men reached for his rifle. Another muttered a prayer. Boone did neither. He stood slowly and stepped beyond the edge of the firelight. In that half-light between flame and darkness, the world became uncertain. Shapes lose their names. Distances collapse. He stared up towards the ridge, and just for a moment, just long enough to doubt himself, he saw a shape against the skyline. Broad at the shoulders, narrow at the head, two curved points rising above it, and where a face should have been, two faint red embers. Watching. The cry came again, closer now, not hunting, not charging, simply present. Boone stepped back into the firelight. He said only this, quietly, as though stating a fact of weather. That is not a wolf. The younger men waited for more, for explanation, for dismissal. None came. By morning, Boone moved the camp. He did not pursue the ridge. He did not track the sound. He did not give it a name, which may be the most unsettling detail of all, because when a man who has crossed wilderness from Carolina to Kentucky chooses not to chase what calls him from the hills, you are left with a question. Was it a beast unknown, an echo misheard, or something older than the trails he followed? In the Ozarks, there are valleys where sound does not behave as it should, and sometimes, in the thin space between firelight and forest, something answers back. You know, honestly, we tell these stories on here. We could just cut those segments out and make little YouTube videos or little audiograms out of those.
Yeah.
I was thinking. So I'm not, look, I'm not Bear Grylls or anything like that. Anyone like that.
Not yet.
I'm
Not
I'm
that
a no,
attitude.
not ever. I'm a fat middle-aged man from the suburbs. I am the opposite of Bear Grylls.
Oh,
I
you're
am
that
I am
middle-aged.
I am more Grills than Bear. So, but the one thing of which I am reasonably sure is that an animal, and that is okay. So our presumption is that the Ozark Howler is an animal,
Okay.
that it is not some sort of paranormal, super intelligent being, or at least human intelligence. It's an animal. It's a big animal. Maybe it's a clever animal, but it's an animal. And to my knowledge, animals howl or make loud animal sounds. Well, they don't do it while they're hunting because it's really not, helpful to alert the prey while you're hunting. Like lions don't roar when they hunt you
Mhm.
because they don't want you to run away. They're real quiet. But animals do make those sounds when they want you to go away. When you're in an area that's theirs, or you're too close to them and they want you to leave, and they're letting you know, I'm here, you should not be here. You should go away because I'm here. This is my place. But also, they'll do that. Some animals will do that when there are a number of animals to communicate, to basically say, here's where I am.
Yep.
I need to know where you are, to kind of coordinate that. So I wonder if what these guys are hearing is like a lot of the reactions, like, why wouldn't Daniel Boone go after this thing? Because Daniel Boone is a man of the woods. He knows if there's a predator and it's making noise, it's not after you, it's telling you to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's trying to find, like you said, others.
Yeah,
More like
others of its kind.
in these situations, these stories, it sounds like it's saying, "Hey, you this is like the feral Ozark version of get off my lawn."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and if we go back to the theory about the red wolves, I mean, wolves do that to communicate with each other all the time. They howl if they're a pack animal like that, and if they make a kill and they're when they're all eating, they howl. It's almost, I don't know if you could call it like a celebration, but it's like they're kind of like they blow off steam after a kill, you know. They'll howl. You'll hear about like the legends of like wolves howling at the moon, and it's really not so much that they're howling at the moon. It's just like when there's a full moon, that's like one of the few times that the wolves actually can hunt at night because it's bright enough for them to track prey.
Right.
So like, and if they catch something, then they do their post hunt howl session. You know, and people hear it, you know, so they assume it's the moon causing the howl, but it's really the moon just allowed them to kill something that night.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
And it also lets the rest of the pack know, hey, I got the food over here.
right.
one
Yeah.
explanation that I hadn't heard, we'd heard the black dog stories, we'd heard the wolves and the panthers, but one that I hadn't heard was feral hogs. And feral hogs are in that area. And you
Yeah.
look
And
at some
and they
feral
make god
hogs,
awful
they're big,
noises.
they have coarse black hair, they can look unnatural, you know, and they can produce really high pitched rising squeals. And if you get a feral hog and you're already spooked because you don't know what's out there and you see this, just briefly, those tusks could look like horns.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it could be a feral hog also.
Yeah.
And they get big.
Oh,
And
yeah.
to my thinking, and I think most people are like this, if you see an animal that looks in some way like not like you expect, right? So if you see a feral hog and it looks huge, and to your thinking, and I'm not saying some of these stories are like this, but some of them are. I'm sure they have to be. If your brain goes, there is no way a hog is that big. It's got to be something else. When no, yes, they get huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could they're like their size range kind of overlaps with bears. I mean, a really big hog is kind of in that same size range as like a black bear.
So this says that feral hogs can often reach 3 feet in height and 5 feet in length. And they can get up to 500, 600, 700 pounds. It's a big animal.
Which, if you're tromping through the woods on a lot of leaves that are down and branches that are down, I mean, you're gonna be loud. You're gonna be really, really, really loud
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
and
again,
scary.
if you're seeing it at midnight, it's not going to look 3 feet high, tall. It's going to look 6 feet tall.
Yeah. There's gonna be a lot of shadows that your eyes aren't really good at separating. It's gonna blend in with bushes and the background, and you're backlit by maybe a campfire, and maybe you've had a drink or two, just possibly at the end of your day. Yeah,
So
there's a lot of stuff. a lot of stuff.
When it comes down
I
to it, there's no bones, there's no physical evidence, there's no photographs, there's no biological trace. I'm going to say this is a great story, and I love telling it. I'll probably tell my kids this story. Here's one thing I love. I will be sitting at my house, and I've got kids in Cub Scouts, I've got kids in Boy Scouts, and I'll get a call, and it'll be, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'll say, "I'm just sitting here." And they'll say, "Well, we're having the Cub Scout camp out tonight." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I got kids there." And they're like, "They want you to come and tell a story." And I'll be like, "You sure?" 'Cause last time I told the story, there were kids who were crying.
You told it right,
do
man.
you
You told it right.
do you know the I was a Cub Scout, and also for a little while I was a Boy Scout. And one of the stories that we relentlessly told was the story of Red Eye.
I don't know that one.
So Red Eye was a bird, a flightless bird, about 5.5 to 6 feet tall, with very sharp beak and sharp talons. And it had one red eye in the middle of its head. It's called Red Eye. And the hit to that was when you generally told the story to the younger scouts, because A, they had never heard it before, and B, easier to scare. But what you would do was you would have a couple of the older kids, or maybe a couple of the adults with you, would go into the woods with their flashlights, and they would hold their flashlights up above their heads and put their hand in front of their flashlight. And of course, when you turn the flashlight on, you get this nice round red circle. And so at some point telling the story, you'd say, all right, give me about 10 minutes, and then start to move around in the woods. And then, like, every once in a while, turn the flashlight on and point it at the campsite, and then turn it off. And so that you'd have these kids, you'd be telling them about these big giant birds in the woods. And all of a sudden, you have these people shuffle around the woods. You'd be like, what was that? Is that, and look, and you'd look out there, and there'd be a couple of these big, about 5.5 and 6 feet tall, right up there, these big red dots would come on in the woods.
That's fantastic.
In the
I
story,
will,
yeah, this Red Eye. It had every camp out. It was the Red Eye story.
I will tell this story about the Ozark Howler at the
Hey,
next time we have
Dwayne, you mentioned the feral hogs.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Hogzilla story
Yes.
where
Tell me
they
about
hunted
that.
at
I remember hearing it, but I don't recall it that well.
they I'm looking on here. I found a page about it, but I'm not seeing exactly where it was. But somewhere I think it was like in Georgia or something. But some people say they think it was an escaped, domesticated hog. So it was even bigger than the feral ones usually get. But they said that the hog that guy killed was it 800 pounds.
Wow.
And they're saying that's like 2 average sized black bears, you know. He said it had it was like 8 feet long, 800 pounds, 16 to 18-inch tusks. Something like that out there. I mean, that's verified stuff. That's like they actually, had the body to
Alapaha, Georgia in 2004. The initial claims were even bigger, right? I just looked up. The initial claim was that it was over 12 feet long and 1,000 pounds. So people thought, no, that it can't be real. And apparently, in 2005, National Geographic exhumed the remains and did a study, and turns out it was in fact a hybrid of a wild boar and domestic pig, and it was around 800 pounds. And somewhere between 7 and 8 and 8 and 2/3 feet long.
Yeah, because they did the picture that they initially released of it. Fishermen and hunters always do that thing where they kind of use the perspective to make it look even bigger than what it really is. And
Right.
I love that National Geographic came back. It wasn't 1,000 pounds. It was only 800.
It was only 800.
I'm going to go ahead and say that the Ozark Howler is a nice story, but probably not a real cryptid.
Or it's
Probably not. Probably not.
a combination of many different animals making noises and scaring
You know
people
what?
in the woods.
It is going to be a
If
good
at some point,
camp out
look,
story, though.
if at some point somebody came out of the woods with an Ozark Howler carcass or something like that, right? I would not be surprised. I would not at all be shocked. But I don't expect that will happen. But if it does, I'm not going to be like, no, that can't be true. No.
Yeah.
It is going to be. It is going to be a good Cub Scout story, though, and I will probably try to get one of the other scout leaders to give a howl, or maybe I could probably.
A
I bet you. I
squeal.
wonder. There's got to be some way of getting AI to make that howl, and then I could just take my Bluetooth speaker and set it on the edge of the woods and hit it.
I do feel that if someone actually comes out of the woods in Missouri with an Ozark Howler carcass, that person's last name is going to be Lester. It's going to be like one of your kids or like one of your grandkids. It's gonna be somewhere. It's gonna be your bloodline. It's gotta be. It's just how it's gonna be.
It may not be the last name Lester, but it could be my bloodline, and I would expect it to be my grandson, whose name I love this. My grandson's name is William Wallace. And I'm like, that is
oh, okay. All right. That's good. That's good right there.
So I'm going to go ahead and close this up, and then I'm going to tell you the story that I told the Cub Scouts the last time I was there. They did a camp-in a church. I'll tell you that story. But either of you want to go next week with a cryptid or story you want to talk about?
Yeah, well, let's see, next week.
Actually, next week, I may not be available, so I may have to let you guys do this without me. I think next week I'm actually going to be in Kentucky on Saturday because it's a 10-hour drive. Look, there's the wife. She wants to be part of the podcast, and there she goes.
Yeah, I'm actually not going to be available next week either.
Okay, we do.
So we'll go in 2 weeks.
We'll go in 2 weeks. Who wants to go?
Yeah, I'll do one. Either like the Goat Man.
Oh,
I was reading about that. That was those stories make me laugh. Like the Beltsville agricultural building, like some guy.
Dude, that's a good story. And then I've got like I have local variants because I'm like a half hour, 40 minutes from the Goat Man, a Bowie, the Bunny Man. Oh yeah. Let's do those.
There's apparently like Goat Man stories everywhere. Yeah.
Goat Man stories in 2 weeks, folks.
Okay.
We'll see you then.
All right.
We got the Sasquatch knocking at the back door. We got the Greys crash landing on the living room floor. It's 4 guys talking about the weird and strange, from the Mothman's wing to the Skinwalker